Jessica Starling pressed the elevator button for the 42nd floor of the Donovan Grand Hotel headquarters in Manhattan, her heart pounding against her ribcage. The leather folder in her hands contained evidence that could destroy her career. But she knew staying silent would destroy something far more important: her integrity. At 28 years old, she had worked her way up from a housekeeping supervisor to operations manager. Through sheer determination and countless sleepless nights, now she was about to risk it all. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing the executive floor with its marble surfaces and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Jessica took a steadying breath and walked toward the corner office where Blake Donovan, the 36-year-old billionaire CEO, commanded his empire of luxury hotels spanning 3 continents. His assistant, an older woman named Patricia, who had always been kind to Jessica, looked up with worried eyes. "Jessica, do you have an appointment?" "Mr. Donovan is in a difficult mood today. No appointment, but this cannot wait," Jessica replied, her voice stronger than she felt. Patricia hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Go ahead, but be careful." Jessica knocked twice on the heavy oak door and entered without waiting for permission. Blake Donovan stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, his tall frame silhouetted against the bright afternoon sky. He was handsome in that calculated way wealthy men often were, with perfectly styled dark hair, sharp features, and a tailored suit that probably cost more than Jessica's monthly rent. He held up one finger without turning around, dismissive gesture that immediately set her teeth on edge. She waited, standing straight and refusing to sit in one of the guest chairs. After what felt like an eternity, he ended his call and turned to face her. His gray eyes were cold and assessing. "Miss Starling, I do not recall scheduling a meeting with you today." His tone was clipped and formal. "This could not wait for a scheduled meeting." "Mr. Donovan, I discovered something that requires your immediate attention." Jessica opened the folder and placed it on his desk. "These are payroll records from our hotel properties in Miami, Chicago, and Los Angeles. The housekeeping staff are being systematically underpaid, working off the clock, and denied overtime compensation. This has been happening for at least 18 months. Eight glanced at the documents without picking them up. "And you brought this to me because—" Jessica blinked, surprised by his dismissive tone. "Because it is illegal and unethical. These workers are being exploited. Some of them are working 70-hour weeks and barely making enough to survive. We are violating federal labor laws. You're operating within industry standards," Blake said coolly, moving to sit behind his massive desk. "Every major hotel chain manages costs similarly." "That does not make it right," Jessica insisted, her voice rising despite her best efforts to remain calm. "These are human beings, not line items in a budget. Many of them have children, families depending on them. They trusted us to treat them fairly." Blake leaned back in his leather chair, studying her with an expression that might have been amusement or annoyance. "Miss Starling, you have been with Donovan Hotels for 5 years, correct?" 6 years. 6 years, he repeated. "In that time, have you learned nothing about how business operates at this level? Profit margins in hospitality are razor thin. Labor represents our largest expense. If we pay every housekeeper and dishwasher premium wages, we lose our competitive edge." Jessica felt heat rising in her cheeks. Paying people what they have legally earned is not premium wages. It is basic human decency. "Human decency does not pay stockholder dividends," Blake said, his voice hardening. "I built this company from a single property my grandfather left me. I turned it into a billion-dollar enterprise through smart decisions and tough choices. Choices that people like you, who have never carried that kind of responsibility, cannot understand." "I understand right from wrong," Jessica shot back. "And I understand that if this information reaches the Department of Labor or the media, it will cost you far more than paying these workers what you owe them. You will face lawsuits, fines, and your reputation will be destroyed." Blake stood slowly, his full height suddenly intimidating. He walked around the desk until he was standing directly in front of her, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. "Are you threatening me, Miss Starling?" Jessica held her ground, though her legs felt unsteady. "I am trying to protect this company and do the right thing." "The right thing," Blake repeated softly, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Let me tell you what the right thing is. The right thing is remembering your place in this organization. The right thing is understanding that you are a middle management employee who does not question executive decisions. The right thing is loyalty. Loyalty goes both ways, Jessica said quietly. These workers have been loyal to you for years. Blake's jaw tightened. Patricia, he called out, and his assistant appeared in the doorway immediately. Contact Human Resources. Have them prepare termination paperwork for Miss Jessica Starling. Effective immediately. Cause insubordination and creating a hostile work environment. The words hit Jessica like a physical blow. She stared at Blake, searching his face for any sign of humanity, any indication that he was bluffing. But his expression remained cold and resolute. You are firing me for trying to protect your workers, Jessica said, her voice shaking now with anger rather than fear. For attempting to prevent your company from breaking the law, I'm firing you for overstepping your authority and for displaying a fundamental misunderstanding of how this business operates. Blake corrected. You may think of yourself as some kind of crusader, but you are simply naive. This is not a charity organization, Miss Starling. It is a corporation. Jessica gathered the documents from his desk with trembling hands. I hope you can sleep at night knowing that your fortune is built on the backs of people you refuse to treat with basic dignity. I sleep very well. Thank you, Blake replied, already turning back toward the window. Patricia will escort you to collect your personal belongings. Security will ensure you leave the building within the hour. And Miss Starling, if you attempt to take this story to the media or regulators, our legal team will bury you in litigation for the next decade. Do not test me on this. Jessica walked out of his office on legs that barely supported her weight. The elevator ride down felt endless. Patricia had quietly provided her with a cardboard box, and Jessica mechanically packed a few personal items from her desk. A small plant, a framed photo of her mother, a coffee mug that said "Best Boss Ever" from her former team. Her coworkers watched in shocked silence as security guards flanked her on the walk to the exit. On the street outside, the late afternoon sun felt too bright, the noise of traffic too loud. Jessica stood on the sidewalk holding her box of belongings, trying to process what had just happened. 6 years of hard work, of proving herself, of believing that dedication and integrity mattered, all gone in 15 minutes. Because she had tried to do the right thing, her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Did you remember to pay the electric bill? It is due tomorrow. Jessica felt tears sting her eyes. Her mother lived in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, managing diabetes and arthritis on a fixed income. Jessica supplemented her expenses every month, money that would now disappear along with her steady paycheck. Her own rent was due in 2 weeks. Her savings account, never substantial, would last perhaps 3 months. If she was extremely careful, she had just thrown away her financial security for workers who would never even know. She had tried to help them as Jessica walked toward the subway station. She did not look back at the gleaming Donovan Grand Hotel tower reaching toward the sky, a monument to one man's wealth and another woman's shattered career. Jessica woke to sunlight streaming through the thin curtains of her studio apartment in Queens. For a brief, blissful moment, she forgot about yesterday. Then reality crashed back like a wave of ice water. She was unemployed, fired, blacklisted from the only industry she had ever worked in. She reached for her phone on the nightstand and saw 17 missed calls from an unknown number. Before she could process that, someone knocked on her door. Not a polite tap, but an insistent, urgent pounding that made her heart race. Jessica Starling, I know you are in there. Please, I need to speak with you. That voice. She would recognize it anywhere. Blake Donovan. Jessica scrambled out of bed, still wearing the oversized t-shirt she had slept in, and looked through the peephole. Blake Donovan stood in the hallway of her modest apartment building, looking completely out of place in another expensive suit. His hair was disheveled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. Go away, Jessica called through the door. I cannot. Please, just give me 5 minutes. You destroyed my career. You threatened me with legal action. Why would I give you 5 seconds? There was a long pause. When Blake spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost broken. Because you were right. About everything. and I need your help." Against every instinct screaming at her to send him away, Jessica slowly opened the door, keeping the chain lock engaged. Through the gap, she could see Blake more clearly now. He looked exhausted, desperate even. Nothing like the cold, arrogant billionaire from yesterday. "What do you want?" she asked. "After you left, I could not stop thinking about what you said. So I started investigating. I went through the records myself, stayed up all night reviewing every property." Blake ran a hand through his hair. "Jessica, it is worse than you showed me. Much worse. The underpayments, the labor violations, they go back 3 years, not 18 months. And it is not just housekeeping. Kitchen staff, maintenance workers, even some of our front desk teams." Jessica felt her stomach turn. 3 years. My brother Trevor, our chief financial officer, had been systematically skimming money from labor budgets and hiding it in offshore accounts. They have been stealing from the company and from our workers. I was so focused on expansion, on building the empire, that I never looked closely at the operational details. I trusted the wrong people. Blake's voice cracked slightly. "You tried to warn me, and I punished you for it. So fire them and fix it," Jessica said coldly. "Why are you here?" "Because I need someone I can trust. Someone with integrity who cannot be bought or intimidated. Someone who actually cares about doing the right thing." Blake met her eyes through the gap in the door. "I need you, Jessica. Not as an operations manager. As my vice president of ethics and compliance with full authority to investigate and reform every aspect of this company." Jessica laughed bitterly. "You fired me yesterday. Now you want to promote me? I was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. I let my ego and my paranoia about being challenged blind me to the truth." Blake pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This is a formal offer. Triple your previous salary, full benefits, a seat on the executive board, and a personal apology in writing. I will also make a public statement acknowledging that you were wrongfully terminated and that you are returning to help reform the company. Why should I believe anything you say?" Blake looked down at his expensive shoes, then back at her. "Because whether you take this offer or not, I am going to fix this. I spent this morning with lawyers drafting a complete payback plan for every worker who was underpaid. I filed reports with the Department of Labor myself. I am going to make this right, even if it costs me everything. But I cannot do it properly without you. You know the operations better than anyone. You care about the people. Please, Jessica, come back." Jessica studied his face, searching for deception, for manipulation. But all she saw was genuine remorse and exhaustion. Still, trust did not come easily after what he had put her through. "I need conditions," she said finally. "Anything. Complete autonomy. I answer to no one but you, and you do not override my decisions about ethics and compliance. Every investigation I open, every reform I implement, happens without interference." "Agreed." Trevor and the CFO are fired immediately. No golden parachutes, no quiet resignations. They are terminated and prosecuted if the evidence supports it. Already done? I fired them both at 6 this morning, and you issue a public apology not just to me, but to every worker who was affected by these practices. With a commitment to transparency moving forward, Blake nodded. "I will do a press conference this afternoon if you want." Jessica let the silence stretch, watching him squirm. Part of her wanted to slam the door in his face, to let him suffer the consequences of his arrogance. But another part of her, the part that had walked into his office yesterday knowing she might lose everything, that part remembered why she had done it. Not for herself, but for all those workers who had no voice.
I want it in writing."
"Every condition. Reviewed by my own lawyer before I sign anything, of course." "Oh." Blake's face flooded with relief. "Thank you, Jessica. You will not regret this." "I already regret it," Jessica said, but she was removing the chain lock. "Come in, you look terrible. I will make coffee while we discuss the details." Blake entered her small apartment, his presence making the space feel even more cramped. He looked around at her modest furnishings, the photos of her mother on the wall, the small bookshelf packed with worn paperbacks. This was a world he had never known, Jessica realized. A world where people counted every dollar and made difficult choices about which bills to pay first? "How do you take your coffee?" Jessica asked, moving to her tiny kitchen area. "Black is fine." Blake sat carefully on her second-hand couch, looking uncomfortable and out of place. "Jessica, I truly am sorry. Not just about firing you, but about how I treated you. The things I said about the workers, about profit being more important than people, that is not who I want to be." Jessica poured 2 mugs of coffee and handed him one. "People do not change overnight, Blake. Yesterday, you were willing to let workers be exploited to maintain your profit margins. Today, you are suddenly a champion of justice. Forgive me if I am skeptical. I do not expect you to trust me immediately, but I hope you will give me the chance to prove that I can change." Blake sipped his coffee, wincing slightly at its strength. "My grandfather, the one who left me the first hotel, he started as a dishwasher. He worked his way up over 40 years, saved every penny, and finally bought a small property in Brooklyn. He taught me that hard work was the path to success. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that. I started seeing workers as expenses instead of human beings. You reminded me of something I had lost." Jessica sat in the armchair across from him, cradling her own mug. "Words are easy, Blake. Let us see if your actions match them." Over the next 3 hours, they hammered out the details of Jessica's return. Blake made calls to his lawyers, to his board of directors, to his public relations team. Jessica watched him work, saw the determination in his eyes, the way he refused to accept pushback when executives questioned his decisions. Maybe, just maybe, he was serious about this. By noon, Jessica had a formal contract drafted and sent to a lawyer friend for review. Blake had arranged a press conference for that afternoon. And Trevor Donovan and the CFO were already being escorted out of the building by security. "There is one more thing," Blake said as they stood by Jessica's door. "I know this is inappropriate given everything that has happened. And please tell me if I am out of line, but last night, when I was going through those records and realizing how badly I had failed, all I could think about was the look in your eyes when you stood in my office and refused to back down. You were magnificent, fearless. And I realized that in my entire life, no one has ever challenged me the way you did." Jessica felt her cheeks warm. "Blake, we just established a working relationship. This is not the time for anything else." "I know. You are right. I just needed you to know that I see you. Not as an employee, not as a problem to manage, but as an extraordinary woman who made me want to be a better man." Blake moved toward the door, then paused. "I will send a car for you at 2 o'clock for the press conference. If you need anything before then, call me directly." After he left, Jessica sat in her apartment, her mind spinning. 24 hours ago, she had been fired and humiliated. Now, she was about to become one of the most powerful executives at a billion-dollar company. And Blake Donovan, the arrogant billionaire who had crushed her career, had just confessed something that sounded dangerously close to attraction. She picked up her phone and called her mother. "Mama, you are not going to believe what just happened." 3 months had passed since Jessica returned to Donovan Hotels. The press conference had gone viral, with Blake's public apology and commitment to reform generating both praise and skepticism from industry observers. Jessica had thrown herself into the work with fierce determination. Investigating every property, interviewing hundreds of workers, and implementing sweeping changes to labor practices, the financial impact had been substantial. Paying back wages and correcting the labor violations had cost the company $47 million. Several board members had called for Blake's resignation. Stock prices had dipped. But slowly, something unexpected happened. Employee satisfaction scores soared. Turnover rates dropped dramatically. Workers who had felt exploited and invisible suddenly had a voice. And the positive press from the reforms began attracting customers who wanted to support ethical businesses. Jessica sat in her new office on the executive floor, reviewing reports from the Chicago property. She had insisted on an office that was professional, but not ostentatious. Through her window, she could see Blake's office across the hall. They had fallen into a routine of morning meetings to review progress, occasional working lunches, and strategy sessions, that often stretched into the evening. Their relationship had remained strictly professional, though Jessica could not deny the tension that crackled between them. The way Blake looked at her during meetings, his hand lingering a moment too long when passing her documents, the subtle compliments hidden in work discussions. She felt it too, that pulled toward him. But she had built walls around her heart, reminding herself of the power dynamics, the complications, the risk of mixing business with personal feelings. A sharp knock interrupted her thoughts. Patricia entered, her expression worried. "Jessica, we have a situation. Gregory Hartman from the board of directors is here with several other board members. They are demanding an emergency meeting with you and Blake." Jessica's stomach tightened. Gregory Hartman was Blake's uncle, a major shareholder and the loudest critic of the reforms. "Where are they?" "Conference room 3. Blake is already there." As Jessica gathered her tablet and headed to the conference room. Inside, she found Blake standing at the head of the table, his posture rigid. 5 board members sat around the table, including Gregory, whose face was red with anger. "Ah, Miss Starling. How convenient," Gregory said with false pleasantness. "We were just discussing your employment here." Jessica took a seat next to Blake, projecting confidence she did not entirely feel. "What seems to be the problem?" "The problem," Gregory said, leaning forward, "is that your reforms are destroying this company. Our third quarter profits are down 18%. Several major investors are threatening to pull out. The board has decided that your position needs to be eliminated." "Eliminated," Jessica repeated calmly. "You mean you want to fire me? You want to return to profitable operations?" Another board member, a woman named Christine, interjected. "Your ethics initiatives are admirable, but they are not financially sustainable." Blake spoke up, his voice hard. "The profit decrease is temporary. Our employee retention has improved by 40%. Customer satisfaction is at an all-time high. We are building long-term value." "Long-term value does not pay dividends," Gregory snapped. "Blake, your father and grandfather built this company on strong financial principles. You are letting emotion and misguided idealism destroy their legacy." "My grandfather built this company on hard work and integrity," Blake countered. "What we were doing before, the exploitation, the corner cutting, that was destroying his legacy." Gregory slammed his hand on the table. "Then perhaps you are no longer the right person to lead this company. I am calling for a vote of no confidence." The room went silent. Jessica felt ice forming in her veins. A vote of no confidence could remove Blake as CEO. The board could install new leadership, someone who would immediately undo all the reforms they had fought for. "You cannot be serious," Blake said quietly. "I have never been more serious. This company needs leadership that prioritizes shareholder value." "Jessica Starling is fired, effective immediately. And we will be reviewing your position as CEO at next month's board meeting." Gregory stood. "This meeting is adjourned." The other board members filed out, avoiding eye contact with Jessica and Blake. Only Christine lingered for a moment. "I am sorry," she said softly, "but Gregory has enough votes. There is nothing we can do." After she left, Jessica and Blake sat in silence. Jessica felt numb. She had known this could happen, but experiencing it was different than imagining it. "I will fight this," Blake said finally. "I will call every shareholder, make the case for what we are building. They cannot remove you, Blake. They can, and they will. Your uncle controls enough of the board to make this happen." Jessica stood slowly. "Maybe it is better this way. You can appoint someone less controversial, someone who will satisfy the board while maintaining some of the reforms." "No." Blake stood as well, moving around the table to face her. "I am not giving up on this. I am not giving up on you. This is not about me. This is about the company surviving. It is about both." Blake took her hands, and Jessica was too emotionally drained to pull away. "Jessica, these last 3 months, working with you, watching you fight for people who cannot fight for themselves, it has changed me. Not just as a CEO, but as a person. I cannot go back to who I was before. Blake, you are about to lose control of your own company. This is not the time for personal confessions. It is exactly the time Blake moved closer, and Jessica could feel the warmth radiating from him. Because if I am going to lose everything, I need you to know that meeting you, even getting fired by you on that first day, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I am in love with you, Jessica Starling. Jessica's breath caught. She had suspected his feelings, but hearing him say the words out loud made them real and terrifying. Blake, we cannot. The power dynamics, the complications, I work for you. Not for much longer, apparently. Blake smiled sadly. And I do not care about complications. I care about you. The way you make me want to be better. The way you stand up for what is right, even when it costs you everything. The way you see people, really see them, including me. Jessica felt tears threatening. I cannot be the reason you lose your company. Your family's legacy, you are not the reason. My uncle's greed is the reason. And honestly, if keeping the company means going back to exploiting workers and compromising our values, then maybe it is not worth keeping. Before Jessica could respond, Blake's phone buzzed urgently. He glanced at it, and his expression changed. It is Patricia. She says to turn on the television. Channel 7 News. They rushed to Blake's office, where he turned on the large television mounted on the wall. A news anchor was speaking, and behind her was a photo of Gregory Hartman, in a developing story. Gregory Hartman, board member of Donovan Hotels, has been arrested on charges of embezzlement and securities fraud. Federal investigators say Hartman has been siphoning money from the company for over 5 years, using shell corporations to hide the funds. The investigation was reportedly initiated by an anonymous tip received earlier this week. Blake stared at the screen in shock. I do not understand. Who would have known about this? Jessica pulled out her phone, scrolling through her emails. Blake, remember when I was investigating the labor violations? I found some irregularities in the corporate accounts, transactions that did not make sense. I flagged them and sent the information to our forensic accountants, but they said it was above their clearance level. I assumed it was just complex corporate finance. You found his embezzlement scheme, Blake said slowly. And you reported it, not knowing what it was. His phone rang. It was Christine from the board. Blake put it on speaker. Blake, you need to get down here immediately. With Gregory arrested, his shares are frozen. The vote of no confidence is dead. And the board is calling an emergency meeting to discuss new leadership. Several members want to formally apologize to Jessica and recommend she stays on with expanded authority. After the call ended, Blake turned to Jessica, wonder in his eyes. You saved the company. Again. Jessica said quietly. Following the evidence? No, you were being you. Incorruptible. Thorough. Unwilling to ignore problems just because they are inconvenient. Blake moved closer to her. Jessica, I know this is complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons why we should not do this. But I am tired of doing what I should do. I want to do what feels right. And you feel right. Jessica looked up at him, this complicated, flawed, earnest man who had gone from firing her to falling for her in a matter of months. She thought about all the rules she had followed her whole life, all the safe choices she had made. And then she thought about the look in his eyes when he had stood in her apartment and begged for a second chance. If we do this, she said slowly, we do it right. Full transparency with the board. Clear boundaries at work. No favoritism, no special treatment. Whatever you want, Blake said, his hands gently cupping her face. As long as I get to be with you, if it does not work out, we handle it professionally. No drama, no retaliation.
Agreed.
Though I should warn you, I am planning on this working out. Blake smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. I am very good at long-term planning. Jessica laughed despite herself. You are impossible. Is that a yes? Instead of answering, Jessica closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was soft and tentative at first, then deeper as Blake pulled her closer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. We should probably get to that board meeting, Jessica said, though she made no move to step away. In a minute, Blake murmured, kissing her again. 6 months later, Jessica stood in the ballroom of the Donovan Grand Hotel in Manhattan. Watching workers and executives mingle at the company's annual celebration, the reforms she had implemented were now fully integrated into company culture. Employee satisfaction was at record highs. The company had been recognized by several organizations for ethical business practices, and profits, after the initial dip, had rebounded stronger than ever. Blake appeared at her side, handing her a glass of champagne. "Congratulations, Vice President Starling. You have officially transformed this company." "We transformed it," Jessica corrected. "I could not have done any of this without your support." "I think we both know that is not true. You would have found a way, with or without me." Blake smiled. "Though I am very glad you decided to include me in the journey." Jessica leaned into him slightly, a gesture that felt natural now after months together. They had been careful to maintain professionalism at work, but everyone knew they were together. And surprisingly, it had not caused the scandal Jessica had feared. If anything, their relationship had humanized Blake to the employees and shown that even billionaire CEOs could change. "I have something for you," Blake said, pulling a small box from his jacket pocket. Jessica's heart skipped. "Blake, we talked about this. No expensive gifts. It is not expensive. Well, not very expensive. Just open it." Inside the box was a simple silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a key. Jessica looked at him questioningly. "It is a key to my apartment in Tribeca," Blake explained. "I know we have been taking things slow, and I respect that. But I want you to have it. Not because I am trying to rush you into moving in, but because I want you to know that my home is your home. Whenever you need a place to escape, to think, to just be yourself, you have a place with me." Jessica felt tears welling up. "Blake Donovan, when did you become such a romantic?" "When I met a woman who made me believe in second chances." Blake fastened the necklace around her neck. "I love you, Jessica. And I am going to spend the rest of my life proving that I am worthy of your faith in me. You already have," Jessica said softly, kissing him. Across the ballroom, workers who had once felt invisible and exploited now laughed and celebrated with dignity and respect. Jessica knew there would always be more work to do, more fights to fight, more injustices to challenge. But standing there with Blake, watching the positive changes ripple through the company, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope and the certainty that standing up for what was right, even when it cost everything, had been worth it. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.